Bonsoir. Bonsoir. Am I on? I don't know.
6:31.
Bonsoir, bonsoir. I am Dominique Ansel. I'm the president of the French Institute Alliance Française. And it is a great pleasure to have so many people on our second rendezvous on Zoom and in Facebook. Tonight, we have a conversation which is going to be extremely exciting. Everyone can bake, and is a conversation live. You will hear from Dominique Ansel in conversation with Melissa Clark. And every month we have a member evening called Member Rendez-Vous. And tonight we're really happy to have this rendezvous, even though we are not in our theater and we have it live with Dominique and Melissa. This event tonight is also part of the member month. If you're not a member, you should become a member now. And it is also part of our French Food and Wine Week. And you will have the delightful experience of having this discussion once everybody has logged in, which means that we are going to have you answer a small survey. We'd like to know where you're from, where you're sitting. Are you in New York City? Are you outside of New York City? Are you in New York State? Maybe you are somewhere in the world. We'd like to know. So just put where you're from, and it's fun to see where everybody is. Are you making noise? You open the thing. So now I would like to just welcome Dominique Ansel, and famous French chef. I'm sure you've all heard of the Cronut. That was an amazing invention, and he's very creative, has a number of amazing things that you can pick up actually at his store, I understand. And he won the James Beard Award. So we're so happy that he had, and honored that he's with us tonight. And he will discuss with you his latest book. And I must tell you, I've never baked anything in my life, and therefore I am going to buy it immediately. And it's called Everyone Can Bake, Simple Recipes to Master and Mix, just what I need. And at this point, when we're all confined, it's a good thing to try to do and try something very new. And I've never done it, so I'm looking forward to it. Now, I'm also very delighted to greet Melissa Clark, New York Times food columnist, and also a pastry expert. Now, Melissa has gone to France when she was very little. In French, we say, elle est tombée dans la marmite française. She fell into a marmite. And she's also a friend of FIAF. And she also published a wonderful cookbook called Dinner in French, My Recipes by Way of France. When I first saw the title, I thought it was going to be in French, but she tells me no, it's in English. So go. Now, during the conversation, you will have a possibility of asking Dominique many questions, everything you always wanted to ask him. And so you do it via the Q&A on Zoom or on the comments if you're watching on Facebook. Have a nice time, and I will talk to you later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. Merci.
Thank you.
Dominique, it's wonderful to talk to you in any capacity, even if we are, miles and miles apart. I'm just happy to see you.
Thank you. It's nice to see you too. We're still not too far. We're still in New York City, so not too far from each other.
That's true, but there is a body of water and several bridges in between,
That's right.
Unfortunately. Otherwise, I would walk over to your bakery and pick something up. But instead, I have your book, which has been delightful to go through. I've been baking from it this weekend. I wanted to ask you, have you noticed sort of a renewed interest or a new interest in home baking? I mean, it seems like everyone I know is baking all the time. I mean, people can't buy flour. There's no yeast anywhere.
It's a great question, actually. Yes, I mean, everyone is baking, and everyone I know is baking as well. So baking pastries, baking bread, and you're right. People are buying all the flour they can, even the bread basket, yeast, even all of this for us professional is like harder to get now because everyone's buying it. So people are not used to sell as much, I'll say. The provider are not keeping up with the demand. And even for us, getting regular yeast is like a little harder than usual. We still get it easier than anyone else, but it's true that people are baking at home. They're making bread, they're making cake. And what a perfect time to launch a cookbook, a baking.
It really is. I mean, in a way, it's a bad time because you're launching a book in the middle of a pandemic. But if you have to launch any book in the middle of a pandemic, I think a baking book is actually exactly what people want right now.
That's true. We've been working on this book with the team for the last 2 years, actually, from a publisher, photographer, editing, my team helping, scaling, testing recipes at home, preparing everything. It took us 2 years, and we finally set the date probably like 6 months ago. And with the pandemic happening, we're very worried about the book not getting the attention he deserves or not being as popular as it should. But actually, people are buying the book, but people are buying a lot of books. People are buying this cookbook to bake at home because that's what this book is about.
So your last cookbook was geared, it was actually a lot harder. It was really geared more toward professionals. I mean, I opened it, I looked at it, I thought about baking from it, and I'm sort of a professional. So, I mean, not a pastry chef, but certainly a professional cook. And this one feels much more inviting. And I know that was the point of it. And so what made you decide, okay, now that you've written the one that's for pros, what made you decide to write one for home cooks?
Yeah, you're right. So the first cookbook was more about creativity, inspiration. I want to show all my creation and all the works that goes into it. So I provided all the recipes still. It was a little bit more technical for sure, a little bit more advanced in terms of techniques, pastry technique. This new cookbook, I want to do something a little bit more simple, a little bit more approachable for everyone. And this cookbook is for all home bakers. So simple recipes you can do at home, but I want to keep some of the essence of the creativity throughout the book. That's why this book gives you many, many options. It's divided in 3 different sections, from the base with all the biscuit, cookies, all the meringues, all the foundations to build a cake. Then you have the fillings, which is all the cream, mousses, ganaches, everything to seal the cake together. Mm-hmm. And at the end, the last section is the finishing with all the cutting of the fruits, glazing, caramelizing, all you need to decorate a cake. So you can pick and choose from each of the 3 sections and combine it to make your own cake. So which is something fun. And there's like so many variations for each of the recipes within the recipes. So it's up to anyone's interpretation.
So I wanted to ask you, so you have, you call it building blocks, right?
Exactly.
And you now, isn't that though, what was interesting to me when I was reading it is that I think that as a professional, that's the way you are cooking in a way, like you are using those building blocks, yet it also works for the home cook. So in a way, it's kind of like this perfect, to express what you do in building blocks is a way to bridge that, because it's exactly what you're doing. And it's a way to ease us into your world and give us options. How did that, what made you decide to organize the book like that?
That's true. You're exactly right. That's the way I work myself in my kitchen. So I don't reinvent recipes all the time. There's a lot of my recipes, my base, my foundations that I have, and then I tweak them, I season them differently, I work with them differently. That's my variations. And that I want to show people that those building blocks, the foundations, are everything essential to be a good chef. So that's what I do in my kitchen. When I create new pastries, I always like take my roots, my foundations, and like tweak them a little bit, flavor them differently, use different ingredients sometimes, work with them differently when I bake them. So I want to show people that they could do this as well at home. It doesn't take to be a professional to be creative. With just simple recipes, you can easily do something different every single time.
Is there a recipe that you keep changing? Like every time you approach one of the foundational recipes, you're like, and you just keep changing it, and it's never, or do you feel like most of your recipes, like once you set them down, that's it? Like you've done your sablé and that's your sablé?
It's a tricky question. I think that I believe in evolution.
Yeah.
And if you look at the history of pastry, you know, when I first started, for example, my days at Fauchon back in 1999, I look at the recipes, and I still have nowadays, it's like a photocopy, right, of the recipe. Yeah. I look at the recipe, there's a lot of butter, a lot of sugar. And I remember getting there when I was 19 years old and talking to the people that were there for many, many years, probably like 20, 30 years. And they were telling me back in the days when they first started Fauchon in probably 1930, 1940, they didn't have any fridge, didn't have any freezer. So everything, all the recipes were built to last.
Okay.
Throughout the day. So lots of butter, lots of sugar, lots of natural preservative. And of course, evolution makes it so everything is lighter and lighter year after year, generation after generation. And that's why I don't think there's a recipe that shouldn't be touched ever. There's probably a few, very few, but everything changes with time, with ingredients, with people's palate. And that's the evolution of us eating, and that leads us to different places.
Yeah, you have a section in your book called How to Taste, which I thought was really interesting. And you talk about, in order to be a good cook, you first need to be a good taster. You need to be able to evaluate other people's food and your own food and evolve from that.
Exactly. I think testing out your food it's something so important. And nowadays I see in my kitchen, I work with the pastry chefs, and they are very meticulous. You know, everything is scaled, everything is measured, everything is precise. It's the same every single time. So they tend not to taste the food, which is something I don't like. I grew up, I was trained as a chef, a silver chef. So I was testing everything I was making all the time. So I kept this habit of tasting my food. Things change, ingredients changes. Sometimes, you know, fruit will be like ripe, sometimes it won't be ripe, and you have to work a little bit differently. Even though you're a pastry chef, you follow the recipe exactly the way it's supposed to be, you still have to test your food to make sure that the quality is good, and something that I do teach in my kitchen nowadays.
So we have a good question that came from one of our viewers, who says, as an accomplished chef, how do you continue learning? And I feel like this is a good segue to what we're talking about, the evolution of you as a cook. So how do you continue learning? Learning obviously is, a lifelong endeavor.
For me, I'm always curious. I'm always learning, and I will always learn in this industry. For example, recently, probably like 3 weeks ago, we started making bread. People love bread. People are looking for bread. Everyone is, everywhere you go, the bread is gone. So I love bread, but I'm not a bread expert. Right. And I've been learning for years, and I have books at home. I watch videos, and I educate myself about this part of this craft that is very specific. It's not baking, it's not cooking. Baking bread is very unique and very special, depending on the type of flour you use, on the hydration, the type of fermentation, the tools you use, how you bake, etc., etc. There's like thousands of things that can make a bread good or not. And I keep on learning by looking at other people's work. I keep on learning about educating myself on, specific ingredients, for example, the flour and how the flour changes. If you talk to to suppliers, you realize that they get the wheat from different places around the country. They mix them to get a specific type of flour that they're looking for. And then every type of flour is very unique to the use you want to do. Like all-purpose flour will be used for a cake, or like bread flour will be used for bread. So there's different type for different use. And that's what I do. I just always like learn, search, ask question. I'm not afraid of asking questions. And I've never been my entire life. I think that's what, opened many doors to me. I'm okay not knowing. I'm okay. I'm not okay not knowing. I always ask questions, sorry. I always ask people like, what is it? Like what goes into it? And I will be like this for the rest of my life. I'm humble enough to keep on learning.
So now you're heading into this whole bread thing. Now, is this personal, or is this going to be at the shop?
It's at the shop. It's at the bakery.
So,
yeah.
Okay. So you just started, all of a sudden, I mean, it's because it is a different discipline, especially in France. You have the bread bakers and you have the pastry makers, and it's not, the two don't meet. So.
Yeah, it is something that I've always loved. I mean, I grew up eating bread. I know what good bread is, and I think we have the tools. And during a time like this, where we kept the bakery open, and we challenge ourselves to cater to our community. We know we've done a lot of donations for hospitals as well. During this time, I want to challenge myself to do something that people wanted, and people were looking for bread. So we have our own sourdough, our own levain, sorry. Our own levain that I started before I opened the bakery, almost probably 9 years ago now. So it's levain is something very specific. It's the mother, it's the base, the fermentation. It's like a mix of yeast and water that you keep alive and you keep refreshing every single day. So every single day you have to refresh with a little bit more water and flour to keep it alive, almost like a rolling stock. And we've kept this one alive for 9 years. And
so you were baking bread at home then, or you were just feeding it?
No, we're actually using it for our croissant.
Oh, you use it. Oh, I didn't realize it was levain in your croissant.
We use our own levain for our croissant, so I decided to take a little bit more of this levain to make our sourdough bread.
I see. Okay, so it was already
also our focaccia. It was already something we were using, so I was let's try.
Right. That's what I've been telling people. Actually, I've been talking a lot about. People are cooking at home a lot more than they've ever cooked. Obviously, they're baking a lot more. And one thing I've been telling people now is, you're not having people over. You're just cooking for yourself and maybe your family. So try something new, challenge yourself. And you're doing exactly that. So I think it's a good lesson for everybody.
Yeah, definitely love challenges.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Anyone in my team will tell you.
Okay, so we have another question, which is a very good one. Actually, two questions that are kind of similar. Maybe you can answer both of them. One person wants to know what your favorite recipe in the book is, and another person wants to know what the simplest recipe, the best recipe for a novice, someone who's never really baked before. So I don't know if those are the same recipes or two different recipes.
They're different. It really depends what you feel like. I personally loved our brownie recipe in the book, which is actually a very simple one. I guess I'll answer both questions at once. We have a brownie recipe in the book, and it's just simple. Like there's a few steps, a few ingredients that you can also add and flavor it differently by adding like different things to it. You can mix like chocolate chips, you can mix like nuts and stuff. And I think it's a good way to start because it's pretty basic. Okay,
so are you a nut in the brownie guy or a no nuts in the brownie guy? Personally.
Tough question. I do like nuts. I will put pecans in my brownie.
Okay, pecan. Yeah. So you're a pecan in the brownie. Okay, so a little, you're veering away from walnuts, but you're still. Okay, I can tell you though that I baked your banana bread this weekend, and that recipe it's incredibly simple. So it's for all you novices out there who are wondering what is a thing to make. If you don't want to make the brownies, I highly recommend the banana bread. And I noticed, so I bake a lot of banana bread. It's something we eat in the house a lot, and I'm always working on recipes for it. So I was like, all right, this is the first thing I'm going to go to. And what I noticed is your banana bread calls for about 50% more sugar and 50% more butter than 90% of the banana breads out there. And it is also about 100% better than most of the banana breads out there. So do you think, is that just a chefy secret or?
I think that, you know, I've tried this banana bread recipe with less sugar because I always like less sugar, more flavors.
Yeah.
But actually didn't come out as well. And it changes the texture. It doesn't stay as moist and it doesn't stay as moist as long. So I think, and the butter as well, try with less butter. It's not as good. So yes, there's a little bit more butter and sugar in this recipe, but it can easily be tweaked. You know, if you like prefer less sugar, you can put less for sure.
No, but the point is, it's so good.
It is good. It is good, and
really
I've tried with less sugar. Really, it doesn't taste as good. It's strange.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I was saying, like, it's a really good recipe. I actually put a video on my Instagram, and people loved it. It's been one of the most popular recipe, and probably 80% of the people that get the book go for the banana bread first, just like you.
I'm right up in there. I'm right with the percentages. The thing that I think also the sugar, it has a crust. It's like the crust is chewy. You know, some banana breads are very soft. This one has a chewy crust, a crisp, chewy crust, and I feel like that's probably the sugar.
Yeah, probably the sugar and the way you bake it as well. And what I like to do with this recipe is actually to leave like big chunks of bananas. So when you cut into it, you still have a little bit to chew. It's not just like bready, but it's also like you have some fruits. It's very nice.
We have a couple of questions from our viewers asking about gluten-free recipes and gluten-free flour. Is this something you are interested in, experimenting with? Where are you with that?
It's something I've been looking at for probably the last like 5 years or more. I have a few friends that are highly allergic to gluten. It's something that I explored a little bit and tried. I haven't gotten any like great flourless like flour, I guess. You know, I've looked at my recipes, I've looked at my pastry selection, and there's a lot of my cakes, a lot of my pastries that are naturally without gluten. And that's why I keep on seeing my friends coming back to our bakery. We have a lot of options when it comes to cakes, like a chocolate cake or cookies or like meringues and stuff like this. There's a lot of recipes that I use that don't contain gluten or flour. So it's naturally like a little bit easier for them to choose from. As far as like the flourless bread and stuff like this, I've tried like once or twice, but it doesn't taste the same at all. And it's a little trickier. I know it's possible. I know that there's a lot more out there nowadays, which is something that will probably explore soon.
Yeah.
But for now, you know, the traditional flour will do a complete different job than something to substitute.
Well, I mean, you're challenging yourself with the bread, so maybe that'll be the next challenge. Will be more gluten-free. So let me ask you, we've been 8 weeks in the middle of this pandemic now, and I know your business has changed completely, and all of our lives have changed completely. If you were writing this book right now, would you change anything given what we're experiencing, or would the book be exactly the same?
It will be exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Yes, I think that, you know, the philosophy and the approach behind this book was really like simple, at home recipes you can do with the kids, you know, for family, recipes that doesn't take too much equipment, not too much space, not too much time as well.
Yep.
Stuff that is very approachable and simple. So you feel like you can actually do it and you can easily do it. And I think that's what people are looking for right now. You know, you don't want to start doing a recipe that takes you like 2 or 3 days, because it exists. There are recipes that takes 2 or 3 days. You want something simple and quick, and I think that's what this book is about.
Speaking of something to do with kids, we have a 9-year-old viewer who has a question for you, and Henry would like to know when you started baking.
Well, I started baking when I was a kid. I started baking probably when I was probably like 7, 8, maybe younger, with my mom and my grandma. I was making crepes at home. I was making apple beignet, which is very French. I was making yogurt cake, which is a recipe that I put on my Instagram as well. A very simple stuff. And I loved it. And it's a childhood memory for me. After that, I started baking professionally when I was 16 years old, which is still young.
Yeah, very, especially here. Okay, and that ties into another question that somebody, all of our viewers are fantastic because they are asking questions that just loop into what you're saying before you even say it. So there's a question here from Camille who wants to know if any of your recipes are from your family, from your mother or your grandmother. And you just mentioned apple beignets, and in the book you have a yogurt cake, a French yogurt cake. So what else?
Yeah, I'll say not too many recipes from my childhood, but you know, I always tie what I do with childhood memories. For me, pastry is very emotional. It's very about like learning your roots, remembering your roots and what you grew up with. So either you're French or American or both. I think that we all have like things that are dear to us, that connect with us, and things that we remember for a long time. So pastry is very emotional for me, and I always look for like childhood memories of things I've done, I've eaten in the past, and how I can tie this into what I do.
Okay, I have one more question that I want to ask, and then we're going to open it up to everyone else to, please ask us questions. But when you were, was there a recipe, or is there a recipe that you feel is always going to challenge you? I mean, we were talking about challenges and, bread baking, but in terms of pastry, do you feel like there is one recipe that is always just beyond your grasp, or you always want to make it better, like one particular challenge?
I think that it will be the croissant for me. I've been perfecting my croissant forever, and we have a beautiful croissant. Actually, it's a personal challenge because I think they're beautiful, they're amazing, but they can always be perfected. The thing is that in every single of our location around the world, every morning before we open the shop, I ask our chef to actually cut a croissant in half, to what we call the cross section, and to send a photo of it so I can see the little air pocket inside, which we call the honeycomb. I can see the crust, I can see how it was baked, and I can tell if the croissant is good or not. It is something that is very challenging because it's alive. There's a levain inside, which what we were talking about earlier. It changes every day. It changes with the season, changes with the weather, changes with the flour, with the person who makes it. And I'm very proud of a croissant, but I always look into improving it, to making it better. It's something that I look at every single morning for every single occasion, and I don't think I will ever stop. I think I'm passionate about it, and I keep on tweaking it until forever, probably.
It's just that thing that has to be perfected.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we're going to take some questions. So, write them in, everybody. We have a lot of them. Let's see. Okay, so here's a question. It's two questions. We had one earlier that I didn't ask you, and we have one that just came in. One person wants to know, she's never made a pie crust at home, and she wanted to know if she should use her food processor or do it by hand. And then the next question is about puff pastry. So maybe you could talk about pie crust and puff pastry.
Yeah, sure. So for me, pie crust, pie is something I love. I'm French. We don't eat pie in France, but for the last 15 years I've been in this country, I've been learning about pies. I've been doing tons and tons of tests. We're doing pie night every year in New York City, which is a fun event where people come and have pie for 1 hour, unlimited pie, 5 sweets, 5 savory. So I love pies, and I'm getting obsessed with it. So
but how do you really feel about pie?
I love pie. I really do. Sweet, savory. I love any kind of pie. Pie is something I've been learning about. The crust, something very important. I've seen a lot. I've tasted a lot. I will say that there's nothing better than doing it by hand. The minute you overmix it, the pie crust texture is gonna change. It's gonna be different. And you want this pie crust to be crumbly and buttery and soft. A little crunch on the outside, of course, soft and tender when you eat it. If you overmix it, the more you mix it, the more you develop the gluten, and you get an elastic dough. So the food processor, I will avoid this. I will just really mix it by hand, especially if you do it at home. You have one pie to do. It's very easy. So long your ingredients are right, the butter is the right texture, the right temperature. It's very easy to do. When it comes to puff pastry, it's something a lot more technical. a lot harder to do. Puff pastry is almost like a bread dough to begin with, where we add butter, and then we do what we call the lamination, which is the process of folding the dough on itself, many layers, many times, by putting it in the fridge, taking it out, and giving many layers. So it's a lot more technical. It's challenging. It's possible to do. It's possible to do at home as well. But it requires a different set of skills for sure.
Someone asked what your favorite brand of butter is. I guess maybe if it's different in France from here, or if it's the same.
It is very different in France than here. I love a lot of French butter. Butter from Brittany. The Lescure is a really good butter. Beurre de Charente is really good as well. There's tons in Beurre d'Isigny in France. Normandy is really good as well. In France, we have like very high quality butter, and it's different than here. Here we have similar butter, but the farming is different. The way of making the processing the dairy is different. So I still found some really good quality butter from Vermont mostly, and from this part of the US, we have really good quality butter as well, which I use for my croissant.
Well, the Vermont, you're talking about the Vermont butter.
Vermont butter, yeah.
Yeah. So the woman who owns that, trained in France.
She trained in France.
She trained in France, yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah. Exactly. It's my favorite butter that's produced in the States. One of my favorites, absolutely. And I interviewed her, and she did train in France. So, okay, let's see. We have a question about where you look for inspiration, which is always a good question. I'm always curious about that. So when you want to bake something new, you want to create something new, how do you find inspiration?
For me, it's not a specific place. It can come from a lot of different places. Travel is definitely inspiring for me. Traveling and learning about different cultures, trying different food, seeing different places, traditions, things that can be like really inspiring for me. Travel is one of them. I always look on social media for things that are not pastry or food related sometimes. The last few years I've been looking at pottery art and how to use the wheel and how to like two different things with it, which I use in my kitchen now. I've been looking at nail art and the painting on nails and how the different pattern, the different colors and different tools they use. I've been looking at woodwork lately. It's fascinating the way they carve, the way the tools they use for different use. A lot of different things that are not always food or pastry related, but are still inspiring to me because of the craft, because of the passion, the dedication, the different tools, the different techniques, and even like painting, sculpting, like modeling. I bought a 3D printer last year.
Oh wow!
It's at home, and I've been learning about 3D modeling and how to do this on a computer. It's a little technical, but I finally got to it, and I can do my own 3D models, print them with my 3D printer, cast a mold out of it, and then make my own silicone molds for my pastry.
Oh
so
wow!
That's what I'm doing.
That's amazing. Do you think that could be a line of products one day for consumers, or you're just for?
I think it could be. The technology is changing and evolving like really fast. 3D printing is changing like year after year, and every new printer, every new material to print, every new program to create the model, everything changes so fast. It's easier and easier to use. So it's definitely something that will be more approachable to everyone soon. Okay,
so we have a question. I'm doing the 2-for-1 here. I'm going to get
again
questions. These are related also. One person asks if you could just eat one sweet for the rest of your life, what it would be, and another person asks, which do you like better, the Cronut or the DKA?
I'm going to answer both at once then. The DKA is my favorite. I'll eat this for the rest of my life. So DKA stands for Dominique Ansel. The Queen Yaman is a flaky caramelized croissant almost. It's from Brittany. It actually means buttery cake. It's my version of it. It's not the traditional version because there's a lot less butter, a lot less sugar in my version. It's our bestseller in every single location. It is something that I can easily eat for the rest of my life. I still eat one every morning. Think about like a beautiful, like golden caramelized croissant that's crunchy in the outside, flaky and tender with like all these hundreds of layers. It's gooey and tender in the center. It's our bestseller, and it still sells out every day and outsells the Cronut by a lot every day.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
So maybe people know the good thing, right?
They do.
They know.
And once they try it, that's
There's
it.
no going back. It's true. I remember the first time I tried it. I think you brought me one at an event we did a couple of years ago. And it was, I think about it a lot.
Yeah, it's a great pastry.
Yeah. So one person wants to know the story of how you created the Cronut.
So the Cronut, it was a very simple story. It was actually for Mother's Day. The birthday of the Cronut is actually this weekend. We're celebrating this weekend at the bakery. We're doing some Cronut holes. We're doing 5 different flavors, 5 of the most popular flavors. So the story of the Cronut was a simple one. I was at the time, I had like two chefs in the kitchen with me. It was really early on. It was probably 2 years after we opened, and I have only 2 people making drinks and serving people. So a team of 4 to 5 people. That's it. And Amy, my fiance, asked me to do something for Mother's Day, and she said, "Why don't you do a donut?" I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm French. I have no recipe for donut." And she said, "Well, just come up with something." And I was like, "Well, I don't have too much time." She said, "Do something for Mother's Day." And I did something. I worked on it for a few months. I wanted to do something that reminds me of my childhood memory, which is croissant, because I ate a lot of croissant growing up. And that brings a little bit of the American culture, which is the donut. And so it's Cronut is essentially, it looks like a donut, but it's more of the flaky layers of a croissant inside. It's filled with 2 different fillings every month and finished with a glaze. So it looks like a donut with the texture of croissant inside. And so I decided to put it on the menu for Mother's Day weekend. And Friday, I remember that was a Friday, a blogger came and he was like, "Oh, what are you doing, anything special?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this thing for the weekend." And he snapped a photo of it. He put it on his blog. It was Crab Street. And he called me the same afternoon telling me that his article went viral. And at the time, I didn't understand what he was talking about. I was like, "Listen, I sleep like 3 hours a night. I only have 4 people here. I don't have too much time." He's like, no, you don't understand. My article went viral. I had an increase of traffic of 300% on my website and over 140,000 links to this same article within just a couple hours. He was like, "It's great. It went viral." I was like, "Happy for you. I'm going to bed. I'm gonna get some sleep." He's like, no. Make more for tomorrow. You gotta be busy. I was like, "Sure." I made like 30 the first day. I made 45 the next day. And little I know, by day 3, I had 150 people lining up outside before we opened the doors. And I had my team like just panicking, everyone stressed out, everybody worried, all the customers complaining because we couldn't make enough. And it was when everything began, and just took us by surprise, and it went viral within a day or even less probably. And it's still hard to explain what happened and how it happened, but it's a beautiful creation. We decided to raise money for charity, auctioning off Cronut. And so we raised over the first month, we raised over $100,000, and all went for charities to fight against hunger in New York City. Which was great. And then the Cronut opened many doors to us for creativity.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we are going to turn it back over to Marie-Monique. Let's see. What do you think is the key to success? That's from Abby. The key to success, Dominique,
Key to success, I could talk about this for hours, but for me, it's fairly simple: to have no fear and to hard work. Hard work is everything. You have to work harder than anyone else. You have to work harder than you've ever worked before. And thinking that you've never worked that much in your life, and every 2 or 3 years, I look back at my life, I'm like, I'm so much faster, I'm so much harder working, and I can do a lot more. And being able to have no fear is very important as well. When I first opened the bakery, a lot of people were giving me advice on what to do, what not to do. Do not open a French bakery; it's not gonna work. I've heard this one like many times. A lot of chefs have tried. They failed. They went back to France. I've heard this one many times. Do cupcakes and sandwiches. That's what's gonna sell. I heard this many times. And listening to advice that you don't ask for is not already not good, but listening to bad advice is even worse. So I decided to go with my own ideas of what I wanted my bakery to be like, and what experience I want to give to my guests. And I fought for it. I fought for it every single day. I work really hard every single day, and I still do nowadays. During this pandemic, I'm at the bakery very early in the morning, baking with the team. And there's only one way. We got to survive, and we have to work hard.
It's a great answer. And at this, I'm going to thank you so much for a fantastic conversation. It's great to see you. Marie-Monique is going to come back and talk to us again.
Thank you, Melissa.
I must tell you, I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to become a baker. I'm ready to work. Absolutely. It's been a wonderful conversation. And I must tell you, Dominique, that listening to you describing the croissant is like poetry.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I can do a croissant. I think the banana bread sounds like I should do that at first. But thank you very much. Poetry in food is wonderful. Now, many people joined us. I hope that you will join us again. As mentioned, we're in the Food and Wine Week. And actually tomorrow, we have a lovely conversation at 5 o'clock. We will welcome Elisabeth Holder-Rabarin, who is the La Durée president. It's not a cronut. The macaron is different from the cronut, but she also had an amazing success that she didn't expect. And everybody was giving her many advices about how to do it, and she will tell us that. And she's talking to New York Times food critic Florence Fabricant, and I'm sure, Melissa, you know her well as well.
Yes.
And Florence always wants to speak French with me because her French is really wonderful. Well, yeah. And we have hopes for you, Melissa. Now I will do a little pitch for Giving Tuesday. Everybody knows about Giving Tuesday. Everybody has received a lot, but we do have an important role in New York, the FIAF, for bringing home French language and culture. And as you know, we all closed. I mean, Dominique Ansel doesn't close and works even more than any of us, but we closed, and we would like you to donate to FIAF. And as you know, it's tax deductible, and anybody who gives supports our teachers, our artists, and ensure that we can continue the wonderful work that we feel we need to do in New York City. So thank you very much, all of you who've listened to Dominique and Melissa, and I hope to see you all tomorrow at 5. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.